So Mike, I want to go back to September 29th, the day of that announcement of the government loans, $500 million in government loans. On that day, in that moment, what was your understanding of the number of jobs that would be lost as a result of this transition?
It was largely the number that we announced yesterday. We knew from really probably the middle of the summer when it became apparent that these 50% tariffs were not a momentary condition. There wasn't going to be a quick deal reached with the United States. And so we had to really work hard on our pivot strategy that is hinging upon the early and accelerated transformation to electric arc furnaces. And that's what the bulk of the job layoffs and job eliminations were yesterday.
And just so people know, the transition from the old traditional way of making steel, these blast furnaces, to these higher tech arc furnaces, electric arc furnaces, it's all the people that were sort of part and parcel of that old traditional way of making steel, that those jobs were just becoming redundant. Have I got that about right?
All those specific jobs are, yes. And there's hundreds of jobs in our iron making, our blast furnace, and our coke making operations. There are a smaller number of jobs that have been affected at the company in our coil making operations because we really are not producing very much coil at all, with the U.S. market being closed to us. So we have reduced our production in our coil department. If the coil market were to return in the coming months or in the future, farther into the future as we diversify into different products, there'll be the opportunity to bring those jobs back and actually grow the number of jobs at Algoma Steel by 400 or 500 jobs eventually as the Canadian market develops and we're able to diversify.
I went back through that announcement from September 29th and listened to Patty Hajdu talk. I listened to you talk. I listened to your union talk as well. It didn't feel like the telegraphing of information was as clear as it is today. It didn't feel like Canadians were told, look, we're going to make this transition, but it's going to cost 1,000 jobs. Should we have been, or should you have been, more clear on that day about what the implication of this was going to be?
Well, that's a great question. Obviously, internally, we've been crystal clear with our employee base from the beginning, and really all the news that was announced today. That's the most important part of this entire week has been the impact on our employees and in the community and on the community of Sault Ste. Marie. And that's where our focus has been. And I would say that internally, we have been crystal clear. We have, our employees have seen us run out our raw material stocks for the blast furnace and for the coke ovens. They've seen the fact that we're no longer going to have raw materials in just a short number of weeks. So they know that this transition is real. They knew the timing. What they didn't know was exactly when we were going to reach that 16-week mark. And that 16-week mark is when we had to officially, and I guess publicly tell and announce the intention of layoffs. But I would say we feel good about the amount of information that we've shared with our employees. I don't think any one of them would tell you that yesterday's announcement was a surprise in any way.
Why those 16 weeks now, though, as opposed to 5 weeks from now, after Christmas and after the holidays? Wouldn't it have given, especially if your workers know this transition's coming, a little bit more comfort through the holidays and through the Christmas season?
That's debatable. I don't think if I know my job is going away, but I haven't been told exactly when, but I see that there's no more raw material for me to load into the blast furnace and there's not work for me. That doesn't necessarily give me a sense of comfort. The other part of that is 16 weeks is required by our collective bargaining unit and by legislation when you're dealing with this amount of notices. The timing is never going to be perfect. And we did the best we can to share the information clearly and concisely as soon as we understood from a larger point of view what that last day was going to be. And that's what we announced yesterday.
Casting forward on the jobs, you mentioned if the coil market comes back, you can bring back some of those jobs. As the arc furnaces come on board and as we get more demands for your product, how many of those laid off workers do you expect might be able to come back in and get some work at Algoma Steel?
It would depend on the state of the coil market, the state of the coil market in Canada, perhaps the state of the coil market in the U.S. if the tariffs to the U.S. are lowered. But it could be, if you think about it, if we're adding one production crew, or maybe two production crews, or maybe three production crews, it could be in increments of 50, 100, maybe even up to 200 employees. But it would all depend on the market demand and our ability to access the markets.